All right, so we have another edition of Flirkin ratings for the MCU movies. We are on to Phase 3, and there's an adorable kitty behind our buddy Tim here. We are going to plow through, in this video, just the first three. There's so many to unpack, we figured we'd just do a few at a time. And we're going to start with Civil War. I'm going to make it a point to not say throughout this entire video, and every time I do, I'm going to donate a quarter to a jar to buy toys for kids, because I want to correct this, and a lot of people have pointed out the fact that I said it about 75 times last video. So without further ado, let's kick it off here with our buddy Tim to talk about Civil War.
Okay, I'm just going to go right down my notes. It's always a big movie to unpack because before Infinity War, this was probably the biggest movie that we've come to yet, besides the Avengers. But I want to start off by saying that I think this is the movie that kicks off their really almost comedic way of doing their in public disguises with the hat and sunglasses. And I thought that was very funny because it's so generic, and in a realistic setting, it just won't work. The first thing that I noticed going off into this movie is the amount of shaky cam that they have in the early fight scenes, specifically Lagos in Romania. No, I think it's wherever Cap meets Bucky again for the first time in that movie, leading into the tunnel fight with Black Panther and Falcon and all them. It's just very jarring, and I feel like the scenes themselves would have done so much better in a context with just smoother camera work. I think it's a really cheap gimmick to increase the tension and the amount of action felt by the scenes. And there's one scene in particular in the Lagos fight that it makes me cringe every single time. It's the scene where Black Widow is in the standoff with the grunts of Crossbones, and they're holding the vial, and Red Wing comes up behind one of them, shoots them, and Black Widow catches the vial, and then they do this really weird cut where she does the kick flip back to a standing position, but they cut that out, and it's just so weird, and it's just corny as all hell. With that being said, I think the MCU would benefit greatly, and individual movies themselves would benefit greatly from more interrupted fight scenes. So the one that really got me that they showed in the trailer is the fight with with Bucky, Iron Man, and Cap in the research facility in Siberia, when Cap and Bucky are throwing the shield, attacking Iron Man. They need more stuff like that, because that's a good way to just increase the hype. I was so hyped to see that scene, and then along the same vein, they need to increase the number of battles where it's not just one-on-one fighting. I love the amount of Iron Man. Again, after I'm at this point where I just can't get enough Iron Man. He was really great emotionally in the scene alongside Cap, who's usually just the slight face. Ant-Man was the best thing they could have done in adding him into the movie. He provided some great chemistry with the rest of the team, and even some people off like Tony when he shrunk down and got inside his suit and was pulling all the wires and such. And yeah, so not just for Giant Man, he was just great all around, even if he was in there just for a little bit. The Black Panther intro was great, and I really loved Zemo. I was sad that we didn't get to see his.
Not my Zemo.
Yeah, but it was a great intro to him, and I loved his scenes with Black Panther, and his whole speech there at the end about vengeance, and just knowing that he'll be coming back in Winter Soldier and Falcon and Winter Soldier just makes me so giddy. So with all that being said, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it 8 Flurkins out of 10.
8 out of 10 Flurkins. Very nice analysis, by the way. You put a lot of thought into that.
Thanks.
I just rewatched it, I think Monday, because I think you and I are kind of on the same pace. I think it was Monday I rewatched it, maybe. And I love the opening with Falcon. I think Falcon is great in that entire first half, and then he kind of disappears in the second. So it's like all this, he's so important and integral in the beginning of it, and then he's just kind of gone. You just get Cap and Tony and Bucky, and to be quite honest, that storyline, now I think Civil War, I just watched it for like my 5th time. Now I'm just sick of it. I don't care anymore. I think that it was nice to see them actually get in touch with emotions in this movie. It was very emotion driven. Like Zemo wasn't really, yeah, he was the villain, but it wasn't like, it wasn't about him. You know, it was about all the inner turmoil, which is kind of cool. I like that they did that. I'm gonna say not my Zemo. I need the outfit. I just was a dude with a bad haircut, in my opinion. So I didn't really get down with that.
They couldn't have picked
what's that?
They couldn't have a better actor to play him though.
Oh yeah, he's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think I liked a lot of the action. I don't have the eye you have, so when I see these fight scenes, I'm like, oh, cool, a backflip. You know, like, so it's different to me. That stair scene though with Bucky and Cap, that fight in the stairwell is just so awesome. That it really made the movie for me. Outside of my guy T'Challa joining the charge, this movie's always had a special place for me because I've been a Black Panther fan since I was like 6 years old. So he's been my favorite comic book character forever. So to see him on the big screen finally was amazing, but to see him played by such a great actor just really changed it up for me. So Wakanda had out of respect, and rest in power to my guy Chad.
You know, I actually I have a shirt that's it's not T'Challa, but it's Killmonger, and it's his design around the Simba drawing that Rafiki has in his tree.
Yes.
For that today, but we aren't covering Black Panther today, but I sure will.
To me, this was just his first intro, and it just blew me away. And then Peter comes in. I mean, just the introduction of these characters was great, and it wasn't overblown or overdone. I think that it was very well done the way these characters were introduced. Some of it didn't feel as organic to me. Like, I love the fact that Ant-Man was in it, but they felt like they just kind of threw him in it. You know, it didn't flow well. I thought he was great. I did think a lot of this movie was very disjointed. You know, they were trying to capture a lot of emotions along with the story, along with setting up what the MCU is now. You know, they really brought everything full circle. When I watched this movie compared to all the ones before, I'm like, wow, this movie's kind of sucked. They didn't. It's just this movie pulled everything together, and what we know now from the MCU is because of this movie. Right. So it's interesting to me. I did like a lot of the writing. I think that Cap's speech, I think all the lines they gave Black Panther, I like the comedic side of Peter.
You have a metal arm? That is awesome, dude.
This movie really made me like Cap and Tony even less because I just got so sick of their drama, the crap. You know, I know the movie was about that. I know what it was supposed to do. I just didn't care. You know, that I wanted the action. I wanted the fighting. I enjoyed what they did with their characters, so I wanted more of them. I think Natasha could have had a much bigger role too. You know, they did a lot in the beginning of the film with a lot of these characters, and then they just disappeared. And I don't care about this bromance love triangle, to be honest, when I'm watching this movie. I know it's the point of it. I just wanted more from the other characters, especially because it's like they kind of dangled these awesome characters in front of us, and they're like, all right, now wait. Which in some ways worked. At that time, it made me even more curious about where things are going. But as a whole, I think that they did a brilliant job with setting up what was to come. I think they had a lot of little Easter eggs. I'd give it a 7 out of 10, I think. Rewatching it, I won't say I like it less and less each time. It just makes less and less sense to me each time with why things are done and how. So you gave it 8 out of 10. I gave it 7 out of 10. Now we slide into Dr. Stephen Strange. And I have a feeling we may disagree about quite a bit of this. So I'm curious to hear your take on Dr. Strange.
Okay, well, it's not going to get the best rating, but it by far is one of my favorite movies in the MCU. Hanging out with you guys, I've really come into my own with finding characters I not relate to, but I just love Doctor Strange so much and everything he's about. And to see Benedict Cumberbatch portray him on screen was just a dream come true, really. I almost don't want to read any of the stories because I can't imagine an Ancient One that isn't based on Tilda Swinton. She is by far one of my favorite characters in this whole universe because anytime she's on screen, I just get this shitting grin on my face because it's so good and she works so well with Steven. And there are some things like the humor falls really flat. Like from the first time that I saw the movie, none of the jokes really hit.
Mm-hmm.
And when he was doing his not astral projection, but when the Ancient One sent him on that crazy trip, I felt like it was supposed to be a joke. Like, oh, he said shit, and none of it just really did it for me. But I loved the interactions with him and Rachel McAdams, who played Christine, his love interest. I thought those were very good, and my biggest source of frustration and complaints comes from the villain. I love Mads; he was great as Caecilius, but I felt like they could have done it so much better.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like they should have made not so much a group of zealots as just a full-on cult for Dormammu, and just allude to him. I felt like Caecilius should have been the villain of the movie.
Yeah.
Seeing as how they're setting it up for like Mordo to be a huge villain, and it was just disappointing. I felt like it could have been they could have been darker. Like I was thinking, like full on like absolute carnage, cult of carnage kind of cult, and I thought that could have worked really, really well. But overall, they just turned out really shallow. Caecilius never had more than like 2 zealots at a time, and it just seemed very underwhelming. But overall, I really, really loved the movie. But there are just some setbacks that keep it from being the best. So I'm going to go ahead and give it 7 out of 10 Florkins.
It's a nice analysis. You're always so thoughtful about this stuff. I love it.
Thanks.
Mine is going to be much shorter than yours, I think. I think Benedict Cumberbatch plays the role so well, and he's so good at being an asshole that I actually cheer every time he gets in a car accident. And that's not who I am as a person, or maybe it is, and I just don't know that yet. I consider myself to have a bigger heart than that, but I genuinely do not like this character. I love him in the comics. I do not like this character in the MCU simply because of how he's been portrayed, which he did his job. He did it well. It just makes it hard to watch and like, and the whole transition to becoming a better person, I just don't see that for him the way that he portrays it throughout so much of the movie.
Yeah.
The other part of it is like his training regimen to get to where he is. It's almost like the 80s style, like you need the Rocky music, like this montage of like, here we go, we're about to save the day kind of thing. And it's just a bit corny to me.
It's strange. I feel like it was non-existent. He did a little bit of training in the movie, and then when you see him appear again in Ragnarok in that little cameo, he's just all of a sudden the master of the mystic arts.
Yes.
And I would have liked to have seen more of those struggles, and maybe if they plan to do a trilogy with him, make that the movie where he becomes Sorcerer Supreme.
Right. I don't know that they knew what was going to become of him, and I think you can see a lot of that through the writing of the character in the other movies where he's appeared, because they, in my opinion, they haven't gotten the character right yet. And it's not by any fault of the acting. I just don't think they know how to write him, especially because there have been so many different story arcs. I think that Caecilius should have definitely been the villain. Dormammu just was not done well. I hate to say it, it just wasn't. Especially if you look back at the comics. It was okay. I think that that's where they tried to humanize Steven, and in some ways it did, while also making him superhuman. So it's, it's kind of interesting there. Mordo, I really was like, oh, cool, sequel, it's going to be awesome with him. And then I found out what the sequel is, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I'm curious to see where that goes. He's obviously not done. We know that. Wong was needed because he made things lighter. I enjoyed that character, actually. I thought he was very well written, and he was more than just a sidekick. I really did enjoy him in the film. This is the only movie where I've rooted against the hero the entire time, pretty much. And again, because he acted so well and he did exactly what he's supposed to do, it just made me not like the character at all. I think the writing was off quite a bit. And it felt like it was ramping up to something a lot of different times in the action, just never quite got there. And so for me, it felt a little flat in that. I'd give it 6 out of 10 Flurkins, simply because I think it had a lot of potential, just didn't reach. And, you know, the intentions were there. They pulled a lot of key elements from the comics. That was cool. Just didn't do it for me. So now we move on to Guardians 2.
Showtime, a-holes. It'll be here any minute.
And I'm curious on your thoughts of this one.
This is my Guardians.
Yeah?
This is one I could watch over and over and over again because there's just so many elements that I love about this movie. And I'm going to start with the music. I know I'm curious to hear you explain how you said that the movie uses music as a crutch. I love that it seems more integrated because I feel like it will be unnecessary and inappropriate when they stop dealing with Peter's mother, because she's the reason, or at least a big player in his love for music, and like this soundtrack is so good. This soundtrack I think is just better than the first. As far as Ego goes, I could not imagine anyone else other than Kurt Russell playing Ego. He brought such character to the character. He nailed that cockiness that him and Peter share, and he was just so great. I may be repeating myself, but I found the earlier scene with Yondu kind of dull when you first see him interact with like Sylvester Stallone, and I don't think his story really gets to where I enjoy it until he's in the cell with Rocket trying to get Groot to find his fin, and then that's when they have all the talks between him and Rocket about how they're the same person, how they had the same hardships, and that's so great. And that kind of leads into my next point is I just love how all the characters are learning different things, and they're always bouncing around, and they're constantly developing their character every time they're on screen. Even Drax, I guess, learned some compassion by Mantis, but he's a whole nother beast. But just the sense of family between the different couples, like Gamora and Nebula, and Peter and Ego, and Peter and Gamora, and it's just nonstop character building, and I just love the hell out of that. And I felt like the ending was very emotionally satisfying, especially with father and son playing in the background, and it was just so great. And that's really all I have to say. So I'm going to go ahead and change my score. I originally gave it an 8, but I'm going to bump that up to a 9 Flurkins out of 10.
Wow. My man, 9 out of 10.
Yep.
I too love the soundtrack. I actually have just a Guardians playlist where I combine both soundtracks because they're both just flawless in my opinion. The music was great. I think in the first one, the music was great and it was a nice accessory to the movie. I think in the second one, the music served, I mean, even that Looking Glass song, Brandy or Fine Girl, it literally was the reason for the movie if you think about it. So it's the reason why I kind of look at it as a crutch, where it's like they built off of that because the music was so successful for the first one. I mean, it's probably one of the best-selling soundtracks of all time. So that's where, when I say they use it as a crutch, I think that they tried to build on the success of the first soundtrack to make a movie around it instead of making a movie and having a great soundtrack. I think the relationship building among all of the characters is really, really great. The writing is excellent.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool where you say this is your Guardians. A lot of the characters that were introduced were from like the original Guardians comics. So the team that we got wasn't the Guardians from the comics, but the players in the movie made up the original team from the comics, which is kind of cool. I think that was nice. And again, it shows that this person knows comics. That's really cool. The funeral gets me every time, to be honest. That's just, man, not just MCU moments, just movie moments. That's one of just my favorite moments I've seen, just most touching. Every emotions experience of this movie, I've really enjoyed, and each time I watch him in any movies, but Rocket's development as a character, I need a Rocket movie. Like, just, I heard the third one's supposed to focus a lot on him and his relationships and stuff. There's so much untapped stuff there, and they've just handled that character so well. The Groot stuff was a bit overplayed, like him dancing off fight stuff. That just drove me wild because
I thought it was nice for the intro, but everything else.
I'll take that in the Guardians cartoon, but in the movie that just wasn't. I chuckled the first time I saw it in the theater because I just waited for this team to come back. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Now I watch it. I'm just, come on already. Like, that character had such an arc in the first movie, and to open it up like that, it's kind of didn't do that part justice. As Peter's evolved, I've liked him less. So it's and again, I think that's the great job by the actor. It's just he kind of gets on my nerves at this point. He's not that much of a bonehead in the comics, and he easily duped. I think Kurt Russell playing Ego was great. I just think the character itself was not done well in the movie in terms of the story. It's almost like that needed to be the culmination. Like, that relationship needed to be the culmination of this Guardian story and Peter, instead of being the second installment. Because I think it kind of was a bit disjointed and not what we needed from them. But again, he played it well. The acting was great in this. Nebula and Gamora is just such an awesome relationship to watch throughout all of this. It was handled very well. The Ravagers, I don't think, get enough love. It's what each one of those actors brings to the table on their own.
I was happy to get more Sean Gunn as
Kraglin, yes.
Great.
It was such a nice scene where, he's kind of an afterthought, but brings so much at the same time.
And then you got scenes where he's kind of in the forefront, where he's seeing Nebula off and he's asking her what he's going to do with her share. And I was thinking a pretty necklace. Or make all the boys go, ooh, that's nice.
Yes. It's funny watching this because I used to watch October Road, and he played a guy named Rooster in that show. And it's just funny seeing him in this now. First time around, I would have given this about a 5. I just wasn't feeling it. It wasn't my Guardians. Second time, probably like a 6 or 7. But then now that I go back and watch it, and I see where these characters are, like seeing the development of these characters in the other movies, like the Avengers movies and stuff that they were in, seeing just the development of like Rocket now, and Nebula, Gamora, and just the way that each character was handled, I actually liked the movie a lot more after I think this was number 7 time watching it. And I actually give it an 8 now. I still think that the music drove it rather than being existing, but I can accept that because the music was so well done. And I just, this past time I watched it, I had a warm feeling actually watching it, just knowing what happens with these characters and just the foresight that was used when writing this movie and with developing these characters, just of knowing where they're going, where this journey is heading. I wish Gunn did a lot more movies. I think honestly, if he had done Doctor Strange or Iron Man, I probably would have liked those characters a bit more. But we have what we have. So I got to go with an 8 on this. And actually, it's last time we talked, about the other Guardians, I hadn't watched this one again, and so now they're pretty neck and neck with me for what they are. And the first one was almost flawless to me. So, and I think with that, we will conclude this chapter of Phase 3 before we move on to the next one. We've got some watching to do. Moving on to my favorite part of the phase. So, very excited about that. Great talk as always. My man coming with some great notes. I love it. And I guess we'll just end with rest in power to T'Challa, and much love, and keep it casual.